Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our new This Is Us Season 5, Episode 12 review. We are finally back. I know this wasn't a super long hiatus, but it actually feels like it was a pretty long one.
Yeah, it did. I mean, there was a lot packed into this episode, so I mean, it was well worth the wait.
Yeah, we got Miguel. Finally!
It was such a good Miguel episode. It was so good. I really liked the parts of Miguel.
I feel like Miguel is sort of that character who's like in between boxing rounds. He's like over at the side of the ring getting like hyped up, except nobody forgot to tell him that he wasn't actually boxing on that day. So he's just been like in that ring getting hyped up for like 8 episodes. And they're like, Miguel, it is your chance now. Get into the ring. You've got this.
It's always just nice to see when he actually stands up for himself because Miguel takes a lot of crap.
Yeah, and John Huertas is such a good actor.
He's so good.
He never really gets a ton of material on like any show that he's on, but he was so good in this episode. We have a lot to get to with him. We'll talk a little bit about Kevin, of course, that magazine at the end, some returning characters, which I'm sure will only lead to plenty of discussion.
That's right.
All right, let's have that discussion. And before we do, if you guys enjoy this video, subscribe to the channel because, you know, there is still a good bit of This Is Us left. We want to be here with you guys talking all about it, and we don't want you to miss out.
Also follow us over on Instagram at Matt and Jess TV. We had a big Easter weekend that was filled with a lot of food, some bunny Twinkie cars that we made, and they're all posted up over there. So be sure to follow us.
Also, waffles. Okay, well, I love waffles. Okay.
Pastel colored waffles. We decided to like dye our pancake batter or waffle batter, so we tried to make designs. They maybe worked out. You can let us know.
Yeah, they might have worked out. But you know what? This episode, it did work out. Like, I think this is the second straight episode of This Is Us that I've just really, really liked from start to finish.
Okay, let's get into the meat of it, because as soon as I saw that ending, I was like, okay, we are all going to want to talk about this. So Kevin, we all know, is getting married to Madison. The wedding is moving forward. Seems like everything is working out okay. And I know there was a lot of people out there, and there is a lot of people out there that think that they're not going to actually end up getting married. But I actually think that they are. And I've always sort of been in the camp that they will get married, but that maybe the relationship just isn't going to work out. That it'll work out for a couple years, and then they will realize that they're sort of better co-parenting. I'd like to actually just see them work out, but that's kind of where I think it might be going.
I had originally been in the camp of, I thought that maybe Kevin would feel pressure to become engaged and start to try to figure out a way to make this into his family, and I didn't necessarily feel for sure that they were going to get married, but guess what? There's a major flip-flop alert, everyone. I do think that they're probably going to get married now because they're not showing enough conflict to make me think that this relationship is in any danger. It feels like they're moving forward and they're having conversations and they're getting on the same page.
Yeah, they are. She is opening up more and speaking out more, which is nice, and he's very receptive to that. And she said that's a thing, that conversation with her and Toby at the park where they were kind of what is said on the playground stays in the playground. It was nice to see her open up a little bit where she said, you know, I'm not that good at opening up to men or women or children sometimes. I was like, yeah, okay, all right, I can see that with your character. So to see her build up that confidence to tell Kevin that she wanted to get married somewhere else and why, and he was just so quick to be like, yeah, sounds great, man. It's nice. I think that they are going to work out. Yeah. So now let's talk about his exes. So obviously his engagement was on this magazine. We saw it throughout the episode. We saw Zoe, we saw Cassidy, we saw Sophie. So it was good to see Zoe back. I actually wasn't sure if we were because she's now working on Power Book 2 and she has a big part over there. So I didn't know if we were actually going to see her back on the show even a little bit.
Here's what happened. So she decided, you know what, I want to not be a character who most people who watch the show hate for a few minutes, and so I'm going to go back to This Is Us. See, And she's a great actress. It's just
Yeah, she is. But man, over on Power Book 2, she is not my favorite
no,
character.
my character drives me crazy. It's like I'm glad she got to do something a little bit different back at Zoe. I don't think there's any future for Zoe and Kevin.
No, one, like we said, she is working on another show right now, so she would unlikely be coming back. And also her reaction to it, seeing the magazine, she had a big smile on her face. Like she was just like, yes, all right, this is good. I'm really happy for him. I feel good about this. That felt good to me as like they broke up and that broke my heart because I really liked her a lot. But to see her have that reaction, I was like, okay, this feels settled. Then we saw Cassidy. They only hooked up like that one time or whatever. So that's not really where I think things are going with that. And she also had that same type of reaction, like a big smile. I'm glad for you. I'm happy for you.
I think Cassidy has some sort of role to play on this show coming up still.
Yeah, I do.
I don't know what it is. But
her and Nicky are pretty close still.
Yeah, and it might just be that she is sort of family because she's connected to Nicky in that way. But I don't think that it is Cassidy and Kevin. It was just that one sort of hookup. It was a while ago. That doesn't really seem like they're in constant communication here or anything.
Now let's talk about Sophie.
All right.
I know there's a lot of people out there that are hoping that they will get back together. And
Yeah.
I was in that camp with you guys for a very long time. I am now in the Madison camp. I really like this relationship. I like that it's not the storybook love that all the other siblings are having, and that it's a different kind of love that's growing differently. This is a show about different types of relationships. And so when we saw Sophie see that photo, her first reaction was a smile, that she was like, I'm happy for him. And I was like, oh, I really like that. That's really good. Then she had a momentary sort of her smile lost where she, I guess, was getting reflective, which makes sense. This is her ex-husband. This was her high school sweetheart. She has a really long relationship with him. Some of it really good, some of it very bad. So, I mean, she's going to feel a lot of different things seeing that.
I think ultimately it's a reminder that she does still have love for Kevin. It doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, this is going to prompt Sophie to drop everything that she's got going on in her own life, in her own relationship, and run back to Kevin or anything like that. But I think it's something that it's a reminder of their history. I will say, would I be shocked if in the flash forward Sophie is there with Kevin? I would not be shocked just because I know this show loves their curveballs. But for now, I am enjoying the ride with Kevin and Madison. I like that there's something very building there in the present as opposed to something that exists mostly within the past.
I will say this about Sophie and the future.
Yeah.
Whether or not she's married to Kevin, I think that Sophie will be there. She had a long-standing relationship with Kevin. He was there for her when she had lost her mom and everything that was going on there. She will be there at Rebecca's deathbed. That is my prediction. She had a long-time relationship with Rebecca as well. So I think she will be there.
There may be truth to that because that Kevin, it's not that far from where Kevin grew up. And, Sophie, as far as I know, she's probably going to be there in the flash forwards unless she moves somewhere else. Like, it does make a good bit of sense. And now, let's talk about someone we know for sure is going to be there, Nicky, who has decided amidst his staying with Kevin, he is slowly descending into pure cranky pants territory when it comes to Miguel.
This was tough for me because Nicky and Miguel are my two favorites on this show. So to see it all disintegrating like this between them, I was just like, oh no, Nicky, you can't be like this because if I have to choose, I'm gonna choose Miguel. I will. I feel so bad for him all the time.
Yeah.
He's always sort of this guy in the background that, really loved his friend so much. That whole proposal thing where he was just like, no, man, we're going to make sure you do it right. Give me the proposal. No, you got to get down on the one knee. It was so nice to see that he was there for Jack, that he stood up to Rebecca's dad to be like, Jack is not someone you tolerate. Get out of here. He is like, you are lucky that you have Jack, and I loved that.
Miguel is an amazing wingman and an amazing sight. Like, all of that was fantastic. I mean, Miguel, I do have one question. Why did you put on the ring? Like, I don't think that was necessary to complete the proposal.
No, but it was so funny that after he got it stuck on his finger and he just told off Rebecca's dad, that Rebecca's dad was like, all right, I'll help. Do you have some floss? I can get off. Which was interesting to me because that's a funeral directing trick as well to get rings off, is a little bit of floss or a little bit of string. And he was just kind of like, is it going to hurt? Probably.
Yep, that was one of my favorite flashbacks in a while. Like, it's not like we weren't anything that substantial other than that, like, how close Kevin and Miguel were, but it was still not how close Jack and Miguel were, but it was still really nice to just have that moment.
Yeah, and it seemed like it was all kind of wrapping around to Nicky's jealousy, which was a storyline that felt like it didn't really fit exactly right for me, because Miguel, there was never really like the three of them together where Miguel swept in and Nicky felt left behind because of Miguel. This is like Jack and Nicky's own problems. Miguel was never the problem for Nicky. It's not like he was holding on to, that Miguel for all this time. So it kind of felt like it came out of nowhere when he showed up and was just kind of like throwing all these digs at Miguel. And Miguel's kind of like, I don't know what's happening.
It's a hard storyline to figure out because it did kind of come a little bit out of nowhere. Like, I'm trying to rationalize it in my head and just sort of thinking, okay, well, Nicky clearly had a lot of time by himself where he was sort of left to his own thoughts, and maybe at that point in time he sort of wondered a lot about what Jack was doing, what Jack was up to, and maybe he sort of completely spiraling because of that, and he's sort of like, oh, if this guy Miguel wasn't there, Jack would need companionship from someone else, and then he would run to me, and it's like, it's a pure irrational thought. Like, it doesn't make sense, I think, to anyone who is not Nicky, but I don't know if you're in Nicky's head, maybe that does make sense because you just haven't had that social connection.
Well, it was also interesting for Miguel to sort of be telling this story of the proposal Jack asking him to be his best man without using the words best man, that he felt like it was because he would have rathered have his brother there. And it felt like to me, and you guys tell me if you feel differently, it felt like to me Miguel was doing a nicety to Nicky.
Yeah.
I think that Jack, of course, would have liked to have had his brother there, but he was so far gone from everything with him and his brother at that point that I don't think that Jack was actually thinking that deeply about it. I think he really was, Miguel is here for me. He's my best friend. He just set up this whole carnival for me. He's in the other room dipping apples for me. He's got the ring stuck on his finger for me.
Yeah.
He is the best man.
Miguel can tell a little white lie here and there, and I think that's probably what it was. I think he just wanted Nicky to feel special in that moment, and I don't know, maybe Jack thought about Nicky at some point during the process, but he can still have, even if Nicky was around and not gone, he could have still had Nicky involved in the wedding and had Miguel as his best man. I don't think that would have been like a really offensive affront to Nicky.
No, I think Miguel has a way of, this is the sad part of Miguel, of sort of putting himself down to be able to bring other people up. Yeah. And he's done that before, and so I wasn't too surprised that he went about it this way as well, but I was really glad to see him tell off Nicky at the table and just say, listen, I don't owe you anything. I owe you nothing. The only person I owe an explanation to is Jack, and he is not here, but I think about it every single day. So for you to say that I swooped in here, 13 years later is swooping in, a decade later, it is ridiculous. And it is.
Here's where things get a little bit sad, so I'm just putting out the fair warning already. We don't know where Miguel is in the flash forwards. We don't know if he's still alive. I feel like, unfortunately, Miguel is going to be that character who these other people around him aren't going to realize what they have in him until he's gone.
The other thing that's very interesting about this fight, where he's kind of like, you swooped in and took my brother's girl. There is a lot of us that think that Nicky is either married to Rebecca in the future, or what I think is that he's doing a nicety for her, because she's already losing her memory at this point while she's with Miguel. I'm not sure if she has the capacity, whenever Nicky would have gotten married to her, to be actually able to say yes. She may not be there. She may have someone who has a power of attorney over her at that point. And that's why I think she thinks he's Jack and he's wearing the ring and he's doing a nicety, but they're not actually married. So having this fight and sort of the possibility that in the future he is now either married or married to his brother's girl is ironic.
And I'm sure the writers love that. And I think if nothing else, they love sort of playing with us about that at the moment. So let's move on to the other Pearsons, because there's a lot of Pearson stuff in this episode.
Yeah, so Kevin and Randall have still not had that talk yet.
Yeah.
But he did muster up the courage to ask him to be his best man, which Randall said yes right away. But Kevin said he wants to make sure that they have this talk before they get to that spot, which is the right thing to do. And I'm sure Randall wants it handled as well. I really liked that Kevin is the one who said, I am going to come to you. This is not something to be on the phone. This is not something over text or FaceTime. Let me come to you. I owe it to you. And Randall sort of had that look on his face where he was like, oh, okay. Yeah, oh, great. Yeah. He's making the effort.
I think Randall appreciates that, especially because he just went on that long trip to learn about his birth mother. Now Kevin can come and see him, and I'm sure this is not going to be an easy talk here or there, and I feel like it's probably going to be a big part of this next episode, but it's something we really need to have. We need to see. Like, we know that they're close in those flash forwards. We've seen it. We've seen that hand on the shoulder that everybody got excited about for like 4 months.
Yep.
This is the chance to sort of bridge that together. And man, that house with Randall, he's already got going on there. You know, Beth's there. Beth's mom is now there. There's all of that. Now here comes Kevin, and we had everything with Alex in this episode.
Yeah, so this was an interesting part of the episode, because we had, of course, Tess and Alex and their relationship, and then Beth walked in on them while they were like kissing, and she had this sort of shocked look on her face. I originally thought that where this was going was that, you know, you have your baby and then they're growing up and then they, you know, start to get to this point where they're having relationships with anybody, and you're kind of like, no, my baby can't be growing up. My child is my child. And it's one thing to kind of think in your head, okay, my child is growing up and they are probably going to be in relationships, but I don't need to see them with anybody. I can kind of live in this sort of land, almost like kids that don't want to believe that anything's going on with their parents. They just kind of live in this land. And that's what I thought it was going to be more about. But it did turn out where Beth was trying to, like, as she thought things would be different for her daughter, and then it didn't turn out the way that she thought, and that was more of what the shock was.
I think it's an interesting story for This Is Us to tackle, and I think they tackled it very well, where they sort of showed, okay, with Beth, it's not so much an issue of prejudice, but it's an issue of expectation, and I think the expectation that she had in her head was just something that was way too specific, because your kid can turn out to be anything, and all of those things can be wonderful and great, and I think she's going to be there for Tess moving forward, and I think they're going to be able to sort of address any of the issues that they have, but, you know, Tess is not living in, you know, Beth's shoes. She doesn't understand what Beth is feeling in that moment, and so, you know, for Tess, I think she thinks that it's inherently personal about her and about Alex, and it might just be something that is a little bit greater than that.
Yeah, and that conversation Beth had with her mom, where her mom was like, I also had expectations of you. I thought you were going to get into more academics and less into art, and I let that waste 20 years of my life, and now I'm camping out in your house trying to fix this. And it gave Beth that sort of pause to then go talk to Tess and kind of be like, obviously she doesn't want 20 years to go by, and it's like that, where Tess kind of said, you don't have to try with Annie or Deja to accept who they are or what's going on, but you have to try with me, and that's a problem. Then I went back and watched a old episode of the show where we saw the future, where I know you guys all remember this, where we all thought that Randall and Beth were not together in the future. And there was a moment where Randall turned to more young adult Tess and said, have you called your mom to sort of let her know that we're on our way? And she looked like she didn't want to really call her mom, and sort of looked down, was like, yeah, I'll call her from the car. And then I was kind of like, oh no, now we know that this has happened. We know how Tess feels about this, that she's kind of like, oh, you have to try with me. Oh, that's going to be a problem for the rest of our lives. And then I know that in this future, it's like she doesn't really want to call her mom. So did it end up like this?
It's going to be, I think, a difficult bridge for Beth to cross here, because this is, Tess's first real relationship. This is the reaction her mother had to this relationship. Like, regardless of whatever Beth was thinking in that moment, and regardless of how much she loves Tess, which I think she very much does, this is still going to stick with Tess for a very, very long time. It's not something you get out of your memory right away. And maybe other things happen in the future. Maybe that's a cause for it. But maybe it is sort of something residual that's sort of left over from here. But I like how they presented how complicated all of this is, because I think it is complicated in a lot of different ways. Like, I went through some of this growing up in Texas. Everybody sort of expects you to be like this corn-fed, muscular, like football player who goes out on their truck every day. And it's just like, I hate those things. It takes time to accept yourself, and it takes time to get others to accept you as well.
Oh, for sure. I remember when I decided I wanted to get into the arts, my parents were acceptive of it, but at the same time, they were kind of like, it was a hard thing to accept, because we know how hard it is to get into the arts, and that can be a really hard, long road, and we just didn't want that for you, kind of thing. But what are you going to do? You got to support it.
Well, there's a lot that happened in this episode. I think a lot of it was really interesting, and we're excited to hear from you guys. What did you think about This Is Us this time around? Let us know, and if you like this video, subscribe for more, give us a like, support us as well by checking those links. We have the store, we have our Patreon. Thank you guys for watching. We will see you here next time.